$9,900. That's the amount Harold Buchanan deposited at his bank on a Tuesday morning 3 months ago. Harold is 72 years old. He lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. He sold his 2019 Ford F-150 truck to his neighbor for $14,800 cash. Harold drove to his bank with the cash. He filled out a deposit slip for $14,800. Then he remembered something his brother-in-law told him at Thanksgiving. Harold, if you deposit more than $10,000 cash, the bank reports you to the IRS. They'll audit you. They'll want to know where you got the money. Keep it under 10 grand and you avoid all that hassle. Harold thought about it. He didn't want any trouble with the IRS. He didn't want an audit. He'd sold his truck fair and square, but the idea of government paperwork made him nervous. So Harold crossed out $14,800 on his deposit slip and wrote $9,900 instead. He handed the slip and the cash to the teller. The teller looked at the deposit slip, looked at Harold, and said, "Okay, Mr. Buchanan, $9,900. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Harold said, "Nope, that's it. Thanks." Harold walked out of the bank feeling smart. He'd avoided the hassle. No report to the IRS, no audit, no problem. Except Harold had just committed a federal crime and he had no idea. 4 days later, Harold tried to use his debit card at the grocery store. Declined. He tried again. Declined. He pulled out cash and paid, then drove straight to the bank. The branch manager met him at the door. She said, "Mr. Buchanan, we need to talk. There's a hold on your account." Harold said, "A hold? Why?" "I just deposited almost $10,000 on Tuesday." The manager said, "Mr. Buchanan, your account has been flagged for suspicious activity. I can't tell you any more than that. You'll need to contact our compliance department. Here's the number." Harold's account was frozen. His Social Security check, which had been directly deposited the day before, was inaccessible. His mortgage payment, scheduled to autodraft in 3 days, was going to bounce. His utility payments were going to bounce. Everything was about to collapse. And Harold still didn't understand what he'd done wrong. "I spent 3 years inside the Social Security Administration, and before that, I worked with federal compliance systems. I know how the government tracks money. I know what triggers investigations. And I know that Harold's story is happening to thousands of people right now who are trying to be smart with their cash. I'm going to explain exactly why depositing $9,900 is more dangerous than depositing $15,000. I'm going to tell you the federal law that Harold accidentally broke. And I'm going to show you exactly what to say and do when you walk into a bank with a large amount of cash, so you never end up like Harold. But first, I need you to understand something that most people get completely wrong. The $10,000 reporting rule is not a trap. It's not a penalty. It's not designed to catch honest people doing honest things. The trap is trying to avoid it. Let me explain the $10,000 rule because most people have it completely wrong. Under the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970, banks are required to file a currency transaction report called a CTR for any cash transaction over $10,000. That includes deposits, withdrawals, exchanges, or any other cash transaction that crosses that threshold. The report goes to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, known as FinCEN. It includes your name, address, social security number, and the amount of the transaction. Here's what most people don't understand about this report. It's routine. It's normal. It's not an investigation. It's not an audit trigger. It's just paperwork. Banks file over 15 million currency transaction reports every single year. The vast majority of them are for completely legitimate transactions. Business owners depositing cash receipts, people selling cars, people receiving inheritances, people cashing out CDs. The CTR is a record, that's all. It exists so that if law enforcement ever investigates money laundering or drug trafficking, they have records to look at. For 99.9% of people who trigger a CTR, nothing ever happens. The report gets filed. It goes into a database, and nobody ever looks at it again. Filing a CTR is not a problem. It's just a form. Here's where the problem starts. When Congress passed the Bank Secrecy Act, they knew criminals would try to avoid the $10,000 reporting threshold by breaking large transactions into smaller ones. Deposit $9,000 on Monday, $9,000 on Tuesday. 2 transactions, both under $10,000, no report filed. So Congress made that behavior illegal. The crime is called structuring. It's defined in United States Code Section 31, subsection 5324. And it says this: no person shall, for the purpose of evading the reporting requirements, structure or assist in structuring any transaction with a financial institution. Read that carefully. The crime isn't having large amounts of cash. The crime isn't depositing large amounts of cash. The crime is breaking up transactions specifically to avoid the reporting requirement. Harold didn't just deposit $9,900. Harold was planning to deposit $14,800. Changed his mind because he'd heard about the $10,000 rule and deliberately deposited less to avoid the report. That's structuring. That's a federal crime. The maximum penalty for structuring is 5 years in federal prison and fines up to $250,000. Even if the underlying money was completely legitimate, even if you're a 72-year-old retiree who sold his truck to his neighbor, the law doesn't care where the money came from. The law cares that you tried to hide it from the reporting system. Let me tell you about Margaret because Margaret's story shows you how the banks actually catch people doing this. Margaret Chen is 68 years old. She lives in Fresno, California. She's a retired school teacher. Her mother passed away last year and left her $47,000 in cash that had been kept in a safe deposit box. Margaret didn't trust herself to have that much cash at home. She wanted to deposit it into her savings account at her credit union. Margaret's neighbor, who worked at a different bank years ago, gave her advice over coffee. Margaret, don't deposit it all at once. The bank reports anything over $10,000. Break it up into smaller amounts. Maybe $8,000 a week for 6 weeks. That way you avoid the paperwork and nobody bothers you. Margaret thought this sounded reasonable. She trusted her neighbor. Her neighbor had worked at a bank, after all. So Margaret went to her credit union on a Monday and deposited $8,000 cash. The teller processed the deposit normally. Nothing unusual. The following Monday, Margaret came back and deposited another $8,000. The teller processed the deposit, but this time something happened that Margaret didn't see. After Margaret left, the teller walked to her supervisor's desk. The supervisor pulled up Margaret's account and looked at the transaction history. 2 deposits of $8,000 exactly 1 week apart. The supervisor filed a suspicious activity report. A suspicious activity report called a SAR is different from a currency transaction report. A CTR is filed automatically for transactions over $10,000. It's routine. It's just paperwork. A SAR is filed when bank employees suspect criminal activity. And here's the critical difference. The bank is legally forbidden from telling you they filed one. When a CTR is filed, you know about it. The teller often tells you there's additional paperwork for large cash transactions. You might have to show ID. You sign the form. It's transparent. When a SAR is filed, you have no idea. The law specifically prohibits bank employees from disclosing that a SAR has been filed, or even that suspicious activity has been noted. If a teller told you, ma'am, I'm about to file a suspicious activity report on this transaction, that teller would be breaking federal law. So Margaret walked into her credit union for the 3rd week, ready to deposit another $8,000, completely unaware that she was already under investigation. This time the teller said, "Mrs. Chen, my manager would like to speak with you for a moment." Margaret was escorted to a back office. The manager was polite but serious. The manager said, "Mrs. Chen, I notice you've been making regular deposits of just under $10,000. Can you tell me where this cash is coming from?" Margaret explained about her mother's passing and the cash in the safe deposit box. She showed the manager a copy of her mother's death certificate and the inventory from the estate. The manager said, "Mrs. Chen, I appreciate you explaining this, but I have to ask, did anyone tell you to break up these deposits to avoid reporting requirements?" Margaret said, "My neighbor suggested it. She used to work at a bank. She said it would be easier." The manager's expression changed. She said, "Mrs. Chen, breaking up deposits to avoid reporting is called structuring. It's a federal crime, even if the money is completely legitimate." Margaret felt the blood drain from her face. The manager said, "We've already filed a suspicious activity report based on your previous deposits. I'm going to have to freeze your account pending review. You may want to consult with an attorney." Margaret's account was frozen for 6 weeks. She had to hire a lawyer, who cost her $4,500. She had to provide extensive documentation proving the inheritance. She had to write a letter explaining that she didn't know structuring was illegal. Eventually, after the investigation, no charges were filed. The money was released, but Margaret spent 6 weeks without access to her savings, 6 weeks of stress, and $4,500 in legal fees, all because she took bad advice from someone who thought they were helping. Margaret's neighbor meant well, but that advice, the advice to keep deposits under $10,000, is the most dangerous financial advice in America. Let me explain how modern banks catch structuring because it's changed dramatically in the last few years. In the old days, catching structuring required human observation. A teller had to notice the pattern. A supervisor had to connect the dots. Multiple visits to multiple branches could slip through. That's not how it works anymore. Banks have deployed sophisticated AI-driven compliance software that monitors every transaction in real time. This software doesn't just look at individual transactions. It looks at patterns across days, weeks, and months. It looks at transaction amounts that cluster just below reporting thresholds. It looks at timing patterns. It looks at the velocity of deposits. When Harold walked into his bank and changed his $14,800 deposit to $9,900, the teller didn't report him. The teller might not have even noticed anything unusual, but the bank's computer system noticed. It flagged the transaction. An algorithm identified it as potential structuring. A compliance officer reviewed the flag and filed a SAR. Harold never knew any of this was happening. He walked out of the bank thinking he'd been clever. The system is designed to catch exactly what Harold did. Not $20,000 drug deals, not million-dollar money laundering operations. Regular people making regular deposits in amounts specifically chosen to avoid $10,000. The AI doesn't need you to make multiple deposits. A single deposit of $9,900 when the transaction context suggests you had more cash can trigger a flag. If Harold had deposited $9,900 and then immediately asked for a cashier's check for the remaining $4,900, the system would have connected those transactions. The software is looking for intent, and intent is surprisingly easy to infer from transaction patterns. Let me tell you about what can happen after a SAR is filed, because this is where it gets truly frightening. There's a law enforcement tool called civil asset forfeiture. Under civil asset forfeiture, the government can seize your property, including the cash in your bank account, based on suspicion of criminal activity. They don't have to charge you with a crime. They don't have to convict you of anything. They just have to have reasonable suspicion that the money is connected to illegal activity, and structuring is illegal activity. Once your account is frozen for suspected structuring, the IRS Criminal Investigation Division can initiate civil asset forfeiture proceedings. They can take the money, all of it, not just the suspicious deposits, your entire account balance. To get it back, you have to prove the money was legitimate. You have to hire a lawyer. You have to go through a legal process that can take months or years, and there's no guarantee you'll win. There have been cases where small business owners, people who regularly deal in cash, have had their entire business account seized because of deposits that looked like structuring. Restaurant owners, convenience store operators, people whose businesses naturally generate a lot of cash. These weren't criminals. These were people running legitimate businesses who made deposits in amounts that triggered the algorithm. Some of them never got their money back. The cost of fighting the forfeiture was more than the amount seized, so they just gave up. This is real. This happens. And it can happen to you if you try to be smart about the $10,000 rule. Let me tell you about Bernard, because Bernard's story has a different ending. Bernard Washington is 69 years old. He lives in Memphis, Tennessee. He ran a barbershop for 40 years before retiring. His shop dealt exclusively in cash. Every customer paid cash. Bernard deposited cash multiple times per week for 4 decades. Bernard knew about the $10,000 rule. He'd been filing CTRs for years. Whenever his weekly deposits exceeded $10,000, the bank filed the paperwork and Bernard went about his day. Bernard never thought about it. It was just part of running a cash business. When Bernard sold his barbershop equipment and fixtures last year, the buyer paid him $18,500 in cash. Bernard went to the bank and deposited the full amount. The teller said, Mr. Washington, this is over $10,000, so we'll need to complete some additional paperwork. Can I see your ID? Bernard handed over his driver's license. The teller said, "And can you tell me the source of these funds?" Bernard said, "I sold my barbershop equipment. I've got the bill of sale right here." The teller looked at the bill of sale, noted it in the system, and processed the deposit. That was it. 5 minutes of paperwork, no investigation, no frozen account, no lawyer, no stress. Bernard deposited $18,500 in cash and walked out of the bank without a problem because he told the truth and didn't try to avoid the paperwork. If Bernard had been listening to the wrong advice, if he'd deposited $9,000 that day and $9,500 a few days later, he might have ended up like Harold or Margaret. Frozen account, SAR filed, potential forfeiture proceedings. Bernard did it the right way, and the right way is simple. Deposit the full amount. Tell the truth about where it came from. Fill out the paperwork. That's it. That's the entire strategy. Let me give you the exact protocol for depositing large amounts of cash safely. Step 1. Know where the money came from. Before you walk into the bank, be prepared to explain the source of the funds. Sold a car? Bring the bill of sale. Inheritance? Bring documentation from the estate. Saved it over time? Be ready to explain that. Step 2. Deposit the full amount. Whatever the amount is, deposit all of it. Don't break it up. Don't hold some back. Don't try to stay under $10,000. The full amount is the safe amount. Step 3. When the teller asks about the source, tell the truth simply. I sold my car. This is from my mother's estate. I've been saving cash at home and decided to deposit it. Don't overthink it. Don't get defensive. Just answer honestly. Step 4. Show documentation if you have it. A bill of sale, an estate document, a receipt. Having paperwork makes the transaction smoother and gives the bank exactly what they need for their records. Step 5. Get a receipt. Keep the receipt with your documentation. If there are ever questions later, you have proof of when you deposited the money and how much. Step 6. Don't change your deposit amount based on what the teller says. If you walk in planning to deposit $15,000 and the teller mentions the reporting requirement, do not change your deposit to $9,900. That change observed by the teller is exactly what triggers a SAR. This is crucial. If you change your behavior after hearing about the reporting requirement, the bank assumes you're trying to avoid it, and trying to avoid it is the crime. The safest thing you can do is act like you've never heard of the $10,000 rule. Walk in, deposit your money, answer questions truthfully, sign the form, and leave. Let me address some common situations. Situation 1, you're selling a used car for cash. This is one of the most common large cash transactions for retirees. You're selling your old car for $12,000 or $15,000 or $8,000 cash. Here's what to do. Get a written bill of sale. It should include the buyer's name, the vehicle description, the sale price, and the date. Both of you sign it. Take the cash and the bill of sale to your bank. Deposit the full amount. When the teller asks where the cash came from, show them the bill of sale. The transaction is documented, the source is clear, and you're done. Don't deposit $9,900 today and the rest next week. Don't deposit at 2 different banks. Don't hold cash at home because you're nervous about the paperwork. Deposit all, show the documentation, and move on. Situation 2. You're receiving an inheritance that includes cash. This happens more often than people realize. Parents and grandparents who lived through the Depression often kept cash at home or in safe deposit boxes. When they pass, that cash becomes part of the estate. Here's what to do. Get documentation from the estate. This might be an inventory list, a letter from the executor, or a copy of the will showing the cash bequest. Take the cash and the documentation to your bank. Deposit the full amount. Explain that this is an inheritance. Show the documentation. The transaction is recorded. The source is documented, and you're protected. Situation 3. You've been saving cash at home and now want to deposit it. Some people keep emergency cash at home. Over years, it accumulates. You decide you want it in the bank where it's safer. Here's what to do. Deposit the full amount. When the teller asks about the source, explain honestly. I've been saving cash at home over several years, and I decided to deposit it. You don't need to prove where every dollar came from if it accumulated over time from normal sources. What you should not do is deposit $8,000 this week and $8,000 next week. That pattern looks like structuring, even if your intent was just to spread it out for convenience. Situation 4. You're giving cash to a grandchild. This happens a lot. You want to help a grandchild with college or a first apartment. You withdraw cash to give them. Here's the thing. Withdrawals trigger the same rules as deposits. If you withdraw $15,000 cash to give to your grandchild, the bank files a CTR. That's fine. It's just paperwork. If you withdraw $9,000 this week and $6,000 next week because you heard about the $10,000 rule, you're structuring. That's the crime. Withdraw the full amount. If the teller asks why you need the cash, you can say, I'm giving it to my grandchild. That's a perfectly legitimate reason. The bank doesn't care. They just need to document it. Let me circle back to Harold. Harold's account was frozen for 11 days. He missed his mortgage payment. His bank charged him a late fee and reported the late payment to the credit bureaus. His credit score dropped 47 points. Harold hired a lawyer for $3,200. The lawyer contacted the bank's compliance department and explained that Harold had legitimately sold his truck and had documentation. The lawyer explained that Harold had received bad advice about the $10,000 rule and didn't know structuring was illegal. After 11 days, Harold's account was unfrozen. The suspicious activity report remained in the system, but no charges were filed. Harold got his money back, but he lost $3,200 to a lawyer, got a late payment on his mortgage, and took a credit score hit that will affect him for years. All because he listened to bad advice at Thanksgiving dinner. Harold told me, I felt like a criminal. I'm 72 years old. I sold my truck. I did nothing wrong. But for 11 days, the government treated me like I was laundering drug money. I told Harold, you did do something wrong. Not morally wrong, but legally wrong. You structured the transaction. The law doesn't care that you didn't know. The law doesn't care that your intent was innocent. The act itself is illegal. Harold said, I had no idea. I thought I was being smart. That's the tragedy of this situation. People like Harold think they're being smart. They think they're protecting themselves. They think they're avoiding hassle. In reality, they're walking into a trap. The next time someone tells you to keep deposits under $10,000, I want you to remember Harold. Remember Margaret. Remember that this advice, which sounds so reasonable, can freeze your bank account, cost you thousands in legal fees, and potentially result in federal charges. The $10,000 rule isn't designed to catch honest people. Trying to avoid it is what catches honest people. Share this information with everyone you know who handles cash. Your parents, your siblings, your friends at church, because the wrong advice is everywhere. Keep it under 10 grand. Don't let the bank report you. Avoid the paperwork. That advice is dangerous. That advice can turn a law-abiding retiree into an accidental criminal. There are dozens of financial traps like this one. Rules that seem unfair but will destroy you if you try to work around them. Protect yourself by doing the simplest possible thing. Deposit your money, tell the truth, and fill out the form. That's it. That's how you stay safe.
Yeah, grind mode on, can't kill my drive. Turn the pressure up, I come alive. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. World in my hands when the grind mode's on. Wake up with a vision, I'm locked on the target. Turn pain into fuel, I'm a flame, I spark it. No shortcuts here, I embrace every test. Pressure on my shoulders, still I handle it best. I was made for the climb, every loss, every scar. Built me in the steel, now I shine like a star. If the road gets rough, I just double my speed. Ambition on 10, I was born to lead. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. World in my hands when the grind mode's on. They said limits exist, but I shattered the frame. Every wall in my path is just fuel for the frame. Discipline heavy, but my spirit is free. I don't chase success, success chases me. I'm the storm and the calm, I'm the rise, I'm the proof. Every bar that I drop is the grind in the booth. Blood, sweat, tears, that's the code I trust. I don't wait for the crown, I earn it, I'm rust.